Bolt Launch Event. Many of you have come from different places. I see some familiar faces in the audience, have traveled across the country, but I know many of you have come from different places. We do appreciate your showing up. Today's launch event is not only about announcing some new exciting smart locks, but it's also about understanding who u-tec is, some of the things that you may not know about the company, as they have some very interesting strategies in the smart home space. So we're excited to have you, and we thank you for coming. My name is Mark Vina. I'm the founder, CEO, and principal analyst at Smart Tech Research. I cover the smart home category, among other technology categories, and I've been covering u-tec and ULTRALOQ for some time, and it's an interesting company, to say the least. They've got tremendous technology in the space. They've been quite successful, obviously, from a sales standpoint. We'll get into that in a second. But it's an interesting company, and I'm really glad to be associated with them and helping them oversee this event today. So today's agenda, we're trying to keep it relatively short and sweet and not bore people with slides. I'm going to do a quick overview of u-tec. Then we'll have Jeff Pouliot. Did I pronounce it properly, Jeff? Nailed it. I nailed it. We'll do a quick overview of the new products that are being announced. Then what we're going to do is something very interesting. We're going to have a robust panel discussion on different aspects of the smart lock experience, both from a product standpoint, a user standpoint. We want to get some feedback from, what are the masses saying about smart locks, and we've got some good representation there. But we also want to talk about it from a business standpoint as well, because smart locks increasingly are becoming an interesting solution to manage properties in an Airbnb kind of configuration. Not to be outdone, we're going to have some fun activities after the panel discussion where you can win some valuable prizes. So that will be up after that, and then we'll have and I know people are waiting for this right now, we'll have some nice cocktails at the reception portion. So corporate overview, real quick, I'll run through these slides here as it comes up. There we go. For those of you who don't know, u-tec is a leading technology company in smart home security and automation solutions. And this is the interesting piece of data that many of you may not know. They've already kind of accrued 1 million users, 600,000 families, and the company already has 200 plus patents on a global basis. So this is not your kind of, how shall I characterize it? They're not a lightweight organization in the smart home group. And it's a company that has really kind of burst on the scene in the last several years. So they really bring a lot of interesting technology, but they've had a significant amount of success already. If you go onto Amazon, for example, they average over 4.2 stars on the products they sell, which is pretty remarkable for anything in the smart home category. And they've done some great review activity, which we'll talk about in a moment. So very clearly, u-tec and ULTRALOQ, as an extension of the smart lock brand, they have a very specific mission. They want to revolutionize everyday products for an easier and more secure life. What that really means is it's not just about offering the technology that does a lot of interesting things. It's really about doing it in a very easy, what I like to call a friction-free experience, whether it's at the technology level or the product level, at the installation level, really at the app level is really important about that. We'll talk about that in a second. But it's really creating an easier to manage lifestyle from a home security standpoint. They have a very wide range of brands. Their Bright and Ulticam offerings are relatively new. They've been on the market now for about 2 months or so. So they're obviously recognized that smart lights are becoming a very important part of the smart home. Obviously, exterior cameras are becoming a big deal. And they've got a very expansive line of smart locks, which many of you are already familiar with. They also want to drive, this is marketing language here, a vertically integrated ultimate user experience. And what that means is they want to be able to provide the capability across the hardware and the software to make sure that the user has the best possible experience. Because if you don't have that really easy to use experience, you won't take advantage of many of the features that come with a smart lock. And you could extend, of course, that to smart lights and even cameras as well. But it's very, very important that the ease of use experience is incredibly, again, friction-free. When you look at it from a capability standpoint, from the idea, design, hardware development, app development, which is obviously crucial, the U-Cloud, which is their ability to store data in the cloud, so you have a very edge-based experience with these products, and production capabilities. They're really a vertically integrated company. I mean, they really don't depend on many authority resources outside of sales, for example, with retail and the other venues that they take. They really control the entire stack. And I think that's really important, because only if you control the entire stack, and there's a certain company in Cupertino that we'll talk about that all, I see some shakings of head. It's amazing what you can do from a customer standpoint when you control the entire experience from a hardware and a software and a design standpoint in terms of the kind of capabilities that you could bring to the market. Now, one thing we're not going to talk a little bit about, more stuff is coming down the road about this. Obviously, they've got a very strong reputation in the reliability standpoint. But from a community standpoint, from a safety standpoint, there are things that u-tec is working on that they want to be able to provide and support the same type of principles that other companies in the technology space are offering. So whether it's about community safety, whether it's about using these products to make sure that data is is protected in a very secure way, u-tec and the u-tec parent of companies is really committed to that principle, and there'll be more details about that coming down the road. Let's talk about core technologies. Again, I'm not going to go through the entire slide here. I talked about the cloud. IoT security obviously is very important in these smart home products. The average smart home now today has upwards of 20, 25, 30, 40 products in the home, and these products have to be secure. A lot of the products that are on the market, they're very easy to break into from a hacking standpoint, and there's obviously capabilities that u-tec builds in their ULTRALOQs that really prevent against that. They've got more than 20 years. If you look at the fabric of the company, they've got more than 20 years of IoT experience. They're very much a standards-based organization with support behind Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, Z-Wave, Thread, Matter. We'll probably talk about Matter during the panel discussion. That's becoming a much more important part of the smart home experience. So they're really about a standards organization. They're really not about creating their own standards. They like to support the industry standards that are already out there. They've got over 100 R&D employees, so this is not a small companies. Core algorithms for biometrics, because biometrics is becoming a very important part of coming up with a very easy experience to open up a smart lock. And one thing that's becoming much more important, because I can't give a presentation in Silicon Valley without using the two magic letters, AI. And to quote a famous politician, AI stands for artificial intelligence. I'm looking at a friend of mine in the audience, and he gets that joke later. But AI is becoming much more important. AI will ultimately make the smart home a much more intuitive experience than the one that exists today, that can anticipate many of the things that you want to do in a very safe and secure manner. Innovation, u-tec is all about that. And if you look at the configuration of the organization, the company since 2015, they've achieved a number of firsts. And again, I won't go through this ad nauseum, but this is not a company that really rests on its laurels. It's always looking for ways to bring new technology to market from an innovation standpoint. Just recently with these new bright smart lights and smart security cameras with the Ulticam brand. Drive a thoroughly connected and seamless single app user experience. Now, the research will tell you, and I don't care where you get the research from, users want to have a single app to control their entire smart home experience. They are not into the let's have 5, 10, 15 apps on a smartphone and manage different parts of the smart home experience. They want everything managed through a single app. And the company has really got to that strategy really actually several years ago. And everything that they're doing is with a single app in mind. And as you can see, from an ecosystem standpoint, they have now a complete line of products that really touches just about every facet of the typical smart home. And it's very much an ecosystem-based type of approach. One app for all, I mentioned that before. We'll scan through that. I hope you've played with their app. I assume most of you have, because you've actually played with their products. It's a very intuitive app. It's very easy to use. Not to say that some people may have to revert to YouTube videos or other things to do certain things, but in my opinion, it's much more one of the better usability-based type of apps on the market. And from a technology standpoint, there's so many different capabilities and features. The discoverability of those features is becoming very important, because if you can't find what the feature will do, you're probably not going to use the app. So from a general usability standpoint, I think they've done a very, very nice job with approaching things from an app standpoint. And as you know, as you can see up here, they obviously have a presence on the Apple App Store and the Google App Store as well. We talked about partnerships. Obviously they've had compatibility with Alexa. It works with SmartThings, Google, Apple Home, Apple HomeKey. We're going to talk about that in a couple of moments. Matter is becoming a big deal. I'll just kind of editorialize on Matter for a second. Matter is a very, very important thing. Everybody knows that at some point, Matter is going to kick in and really going to have a pretty important effect on the smart home in terms of streamlining it and making it easier to use. One of the unheralded features of Matter is that Matter requires, for you to have a Matter compliant device, it has to support a minimum amount of security that's embedded in the product. So that's a really good thing. I think everybody agrees. So Matter will become a much bigger thing. It's compatible. They're compatible with Z-Wave and IFTTT. So really, they've touched all the right bases in terms of creating an experience that really provides compatible products that work with just about everything. So that's about it. That's the brand. Let me bring up Jeff Pouliot for a quick overview of the new products. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So I'll get past this. So thank you guys again. I appreciate it. As Mark said, really appreciate you coming out. It's an exciting day for me. I'm the warrior that's out in the channel selling to ultimately the decision makers that get the product into your hand. So getting your feedback and getting the product into your hand and getting that direction is crucial for us as we continue to move forward. So this, okay, cool. That's I will say is this has been an amazing project for me to work on, and the Bolt is the thing that's going to revolutionize the smart lock at the front door. So as you can see here, it's going through the different features. I'm going to let it play out. So this is the Bolt. This is an NFC version and a fingerprint version. So how did we get here? We are the #1 selling smart lock on Kickstarter. We're the #1 selling smart lock on Amazon, and we're like, hey, we have to continue this great streak, and we redefine this smart lock again. So we're the most user friendly, we're the most connected, we're the most secure, and we're also the most value for your buck. So we went to the market and said, hey, what are some of the pain points that you come across as you have a smart lock in the channel? And keys. So I've had my house for 10 years. I don't know where my keys are. I can't expect my kids to understand where their keys are. So we still have it as a means to fall back on, but there's so many different ways to unlock your smart lock, including your fingerprint, which is one of my favorite features. The smart locks that are out on the channel, some of them are just electronic locks, and they don't do much. They're not connected to your home. As Mark said, having that ecosystem with a one app and then Matter and some of these other technologies is really what's going to bring everything together to make people continue to trust ULTRALOQ as we expanded to different categories. What we hear from our Airbnb customers, being able to control your smart lock from all over the world has been one of the biggest runs of our product. The nice thing about having Wi-Fi connectivity with our products is you can literally control it from a beach, or you can do it from your from your attic. Or my parents live in Fort Myers; they forget where their keys are all the time. And then batteries. Batteries is the bane of our existence. Batteries just keep going out of style every time. So keys. 63% of people still have keys. They just don't know where they are. Telling you. So the nice thing is if you look at the research that we've done as ULTRALOQ, we've provided you 9 different ways to unlock your lock, including your fingerprint, IoT, Apple HomeKit, Google, Alexa, and we even have codes and the u-tec app, which is super intuitive. So the elephant in the room is how do you support Apple? So our team has been working countlessly in regards to the HomeKit, the HomeKey, and the Bolt new product has incorporated both of them. So now we have Google, Alexa, and Apple.
This is the Bolt NFC lock by ULTRALOQ. Designed to work with Apple HomeKit, it's easy to forget something. But with ULTRALOQ Bolt NFC, you can leave your worries behind.
Hey Siri, lock the front door.
So that's one of my favorite features. I'm not from California, I'm from Minnesota, and it's cold. So when my kids come home from school, I want to make sure they're not staying at the front door freezing their butt off. So the technology is not only just from their phones, because all the kids have a phone, but I know that if they have their finger on them, they can get into the front door. So Apple and a finger make sure my kids don't freeze their butt off. And now moving forward, we also have the Apple Watch. So you don't necessarily need to have your phone on you. If you have an Apple smartwatch, you go up, you press your watch to the lock, and it instantly unlocks. So again, the thing that we keep hearing from our consumers is how do you make it easy for me to gain access to my property really without me thinking about it? And then the HomeKit ecosystem where it's your smartphone, it's NFC, and your smartwatch, your Apple Watch as well.
Siri, unlock the front door.
And we had to incorporate Siri as well because we have Alexa and Google. And so now you have all three voice commands so you can literally unlock your door with just your voice. This was a huge feature during COVID. And when people didn't want to go to their front door and having food or whatever delivered, being able to unlock your door with your voice was a monstrous uptick in our overall success.
The anti-peep feature allows you to keep your door codes safe by hiding them in a string of numbers. Finger, app, code, or backup key.
So the cool thing about that is there's so many different ways you can open your smart lock. If one of the quickest turnkey solutions is our anti-peep code, where you actually hide your code in the middle of a number, so that way somebody can't look over your shoulder and gain access to your property by stealing your number. And that number changes constantly. But then you can, again, I talked about this before, your finger is your key. 3D biometric fingerprint, you can literally turn your thumb or your finger. I always say scan a couple of your fingers to make sure you're getting access at any given time. It can hold up to 100 different fingerprints. If you have 100 people in your family, they have access to your lock. This is, again, the anti-peep tactical key. We've done research too. The digital keypads, work well, but sometimes there's sun that gets involved. We like the feeling of the buttons, and so do our customers. So this is a feature that carried forward with our products. NFC, this is going back to the hospitality world or Airbnb, where people don't necessarily want a fingerprint. They just want a key they just want the NFC card that they can hold up to the lock and get access to it, so they can trade the key card back and forth. So I go to Costco 3 times a week, and I come home with a load of groceries. I don't always have a free hand. The nice thing is when you're in proximity of the lock, it'll unlock knowing that the phone is in your back pocket. And as Mark and I will hammer home, the u-tec app is one of the easiest apps to use because everything is integrated into it. And now moving forward, having the light bulbs and also the camera and other stuff in the future will all have a centralized place you can control. Battery life, you're going to keep hearing the market. One of the reasons, Mark brought it up on Amazon, one of the reasons why we have great reviews on Amazon is because we stand by our battery life. People just want to be able to get access to their product, their door, and having a battery life that sticks up to make sure that you can get into your property. And you get notifications. Another great feature about our products is we take the guesswork out of it. If your batteries are low, we're going to send you a notification. With the Bolt, now you're connected to your home Wi-Fi. You can now access it or control it from a remote location. The app lets you set up different personalities. You can have your neighbor, your wife, your kids, everything set up in the app, and you can also schedule the duration of the code that you provide somebody, so it only lasts a week. And then, yes, we're the brains behind the smart lock are with the big guys in town, and we're working with all of them. And as Mark said, Matter's that center point that you're going to hear more and more about. There's going to be a nice panel discussion talking about Matter and how it comes to market, and we're excited to be a part of that family. And then we're always constantly looking for technology partners to help advance our solutions as well. Silicon Labs literally will help us play in the Matter realm. And then security. We can't have a smart lock and not talk about security. So ANSI 1 is the #1 security level for any commercial or residential smart lock. All of our products are ANSI 1. So just go out in the market and look on the box. I don't think they're going to brag about it because they're level 3. So, and when you have that ANSI certification, that means we're 35 times stronger, and we have 7 times the life, which means you're investing in a smart lock that's going to last over time. And weather. I think we've all dealt with our fair share of weather this year. So IPX means that we're weatherproof, and that's part of the strength of having that weatherproof and weather resistance products in the channel. And this is one of my favorite things. I always get asked when I lay in bed, and my wife turns to me, she's like, "Hey, did you lock the front door?" Well, guess what? We have the auto lock feature. You can set it up in your app, and it will automatically lock within 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, whatever you want to do it, all controlled in the u-tec app. And yes, we have your personal security in mind. So not only do we want to provide the strength at the front door, but we also want to give you the point that, hey, we're giving you the highest level of encryption, so that way your personal data is secure as well. And it's literally, it only takes a single screwdriver. We just had a really super great opportunity with HSN where we did very well, and it really came down to the ease of installation that helped us win with Mom. So 1 screwdriver, 6 screws. And again, the interface, we're going to keep saying it. We want to keep it easy. We want to make it easy for our customers. So now, if you move forward, if you look at the Bolt, we actually show indicator nodes of when the lock is unlocked with a check mark, when it's not, and then when the batteries are actually winding down too, and you'll see the icons when you're connected, and then when the batteries are going in low as well. So we listened to the community, and then we put it into the lock as well. Because they didn't want it, they locked up to the lock, and they just said, what does a red dot mean? Well, guess what? We listened, and we put it into the lock. So again, this is our anti-peep code as well. And moving forward, we are the only ones that are going to have colors in this lock. One of those things where there's other smart locks in the channel. We want to differentiate ourselves, not just with technology, but with look and feel. There's a lot of new projects that are going up, especially on college campuses. We think that colors could win. So also suggestions from our community. Burgundy red, lightning silver, and Klein blue. That is a color. That was new to me. So coming up, this is where we're going to be at, $249, which is for the technology the best in the market. All things involved into the product, $249, and we will be having a limited pre-order in November and shipping in December. So it is a big feat. Hats off to the team for all the hard work of getting us not just to here, but having an amazing product to talk about, and hopefully we'll see the results in the channel. Thank you, guys.
Jeff, thank you. Okay, here comes the fun part now. We've assembled an esteemed group of panelists to really chat about the smart home category, the smart lock category, I should say. I'm going to bring up in a second John Quain, who has written for the New York Times. John, you can take a bow. He's a technology reporter and a bioethicist. I love that part. Andrea Smith, who is a technology reporter. You've probably seen her on ABC News and on actually on many different types of news programs. He's just a consultant speaker. We've got Shane Starnes, who is a Amazon A-list influencer, and that's really important because we wanted to get someone who could talk and represent, hey, here's what I'm hearing from my influencers on the product category. And then we've got Daniel Dillion, who's a VC and angel investor, but he's also a real estate owner, and will be able to talk to the smart lock category from an Airbnb and just a multiple rental property standpoint. So the first person we want to chat with for a few minutes here, and each of these sections will be about 10 minutes, so we'll probably go for about 25 or 30 minutes together. But John, I'm going to let you take the microphone.
Sure. Well, I think we were. Yeah.
Yeah, let me do that. Oh, thank you very much. She's a professional. So, John, from a technology standpoint, you've been looking at this category for some time. What are the things that jump at you from a technology standpoint and from a home security standpoint? What has changed over the last few years that really makes this category so interesting and so vital?
Right. Well, if you remember what it used to be like, where you subscribed to a service, you needed a professional installation, it cost a lot of money for all of that. Not everybody could afford to do something like that. And they also weren't smart. You remember racing to open the door and then punching your code before you set off the alarm and the police showed up. So that was sort of the early days, and it wasn't smart. There was nothing like geolocation, like if you leave your home and it knows whether you're home or away. None of that was available. There was no remote unlocking of the home. If you had a dog walker or somebody needed to go and check the heat, or you were worried about the electricity, something had gone, there was no way to really do that. And you needed to have emergency keys. I mean, in some places you give a set to your friend in case you forget yours. All that sort of gone with these smart locks and these devices now. And they've gotten much more sophisticated, and they're much less money. So for a fraction of the cost now, you can install one yourself. You can do it yourself. Like we said with the screwdriver, it took me 20 minutes with the ULTRALOQ to change one out. Now, I've done it before, obviously, but a lot of people, it doesn't take very long at all. So that's a big difference. And there's, it's sweeping up. So there is about 21% of homeowners now and renters have a smart lock installed of some kind or another. It's going to be about 61% within a couple of years. That's the estimate. And that's because it's affordable now. We can all do it. You can also do it if you rent, which is a whole market that's forgotten. So my landlord doesn't need to know whether I have one or not. I can install it and then uninstall it when I leave. I think those are big, big differences.
No, those are all great points, and I think you've rightly said that the smart lock category is really starting to hit its stride from a technology, from an install standpoint. I mean, let's face it, when you're buying one of these smart locks, generally speaking, you're not going to probably just buy one. If you own a home, you have more than one door that gets it. So most people will love the fact that they typically want to use the same brand. They want to have the same app, be able to use with those. But you also mentioned the Airbnb rental portion. And one of the capabilities that the ULTRALOQ Smart Hubs have is the whole idea of being able to get a code that will expire for a certain time. So you've got to let a housekeeper into the home. Very convenient things. You couldn't do that in the early days of the smart lock. But let's talk a bit about Apple HomeKit, because that's obviously the big news here. The Apple HomeKit, Apple has been, I think it would be fair to say, has been a bit of a fledgling player in the smart home kit. I think that's fair. Hopefully no missiles will be fired at me from Cupertino for saying that. But there are people who are dedicated to the Apple ecosystem. They have bought into the whole HomeKit idea. And I want to get your perspective on the importance of the HomeKit component of today's announcement.
I mean, one of the things about Apple is you can't forget them. Like you said, they're not the leader in the category right now. Certainly not number 4, something like that behind Google and those kind of players. But you've got to be able to work with everything. You can't buy a lock at Lowe's and then get it home and go, oh, it doesn't work with the stuff I have. Or my daughter is an Apple user, and even though I'm not, she's not going to use this. It's got to work with everything out there, whether you have a Samsung TV and it's smart things, or whether you're an iPhone user and you have an iPad mini or whatever you're using. And there are a lot of users. So even though the Apple isn't number 1, they have 163 million iPhone users in the United States alone. So that's a market you don't want to ignore. Even if they're not number 1 now, we don't know what they'll be like in 2 years from now. Also having that compatibility with Alexa, SmartThings, everything. again, it's got to work with everything I've got. If that's what I like to do, if my interface is voice, I should be able to use it with Siri or with Alexa. If I'm comfortable with the fingerprint, then I should be able to use it that way as well. I actually wanted to say, so Apple sort of made us used to the biometric. A few years ago, you recall, a lot of discussion, I don't want to use my fingerprint on something. I'm not sure who's storing that, where it is, etc. Now Apple has made that just ubiquitous, and that's the interface that we want to use. And Apple is also end-to-end encryption. So that security aspect that they offer, I think you're going to see more people using it that way. So I think that compatibility is essential now.
Just last 30-second comment on Matter. Can't get, I had to use that magic word. We're already an hour into the presentation, Mark, and it's only said Matter 5 times. It is important, you know, and there's a bit of a waiting for Godot, for those of you who have a theatrical background, kind of analogy to this, but you do think Matter is important.
It could be. I mean, it's hard. You know, you go to a dozen, 20 some odd CESs and shows like that, and I don't know how many shows at IFA in Berlin, and you know, they're always this, it's going to take over. Everybody's got that emblem on their device. It's hard to say. It could, absolutely. And you don't want it in this market. You know, to make the lock easy, these devices need to be much easier. That was the whole complaint that consumers had a couple of years ago. So you want it to be compatible with all that? Absolutely. You can't ignore it. And it could really help in terms of security, as you pointed out. But there was some skepticism still out there. But you got to build it in anyway. You just have to.
Well, let's turn the tables to Andrea Smith. Andrea is my dedicated New York Giants fan on the East Coast. We had a terrible night last night, but I'll get past that. As a woman and expert in the technology field, how do you think smart home technology, and especially smart locks, because smart locks are not only protecting your belongings, you know, people's lives are in their homes, but children as well. How does it contribute to the safety and security of families? I mean, from your perspective.
Well, in so many ways. First of all, just as a parent, it just gives you such peace of mind, right? Because you are able to know, given you get a log of everyone who's come in and out of your home and who's used your lock, you know your kids have gotten home. So you don't have to be helicopter parents. You don't have to say, text me when you get home. You don't have to call. You just know, you get a notification on your phone that they're home, or and how they entered. One thing I think about when I was writing an article about smart locks is I was a latchkey kid, right? Grew up in New York City with my key. Nobody was home. My sister and I came home, and if we lost our key, forget it. I mean, you know, we would just have to sit downstairs with the doorman until mom came home. Then I moved to the suburbs and had kids, and, you know, you could hide a key. You could put it under the flower pot. You could put it under a rock. You don't need keys anymore. And as Jeff said, you know, your fingerprint is your entry. And that just takes such a worry off of parents, any parent's mind, knowing that their kids can get into the house. They can get in with their fingerprint, they can get in with a code, and just knowing where they are.
So the word that comes to mind, especially given your background, is the empowering nature of smart home technology, particularly smart locks. You know, more and more women that we've got two earning income families, more and more. So the house, you know, sometimes you need to be able to have the capability to monitor children and manage all those type of things. Is there an empowering component of technology like smart locks, especially the way that ULTRALOQ has implemented things that appeal to you?
Well, so much about technology and the connectivity and Internet of Things appeals to me about this, because it's really, when it works well, it's designed to make our lives easier. Now, I do say when it works well, because it doesn't always. What I like about these locks is that I have tried them, I've used them, they perform very well. And they make it so that I don't have to think about, do I have my keys? Where are my keys? I'm carrying my groceries. I can get into my house, you know, just by walking up to the door. And the integration is something that I think a lot of people are not really familiar that it's going to happen yet. So, for instance, I have a lot of smart home devices in my house, and if I ask Alexa to set my alarm for the next morning, the first time she said to me, "Sure, but you know your front door is unlocked," I was like, "What? Really?" And she could lock my front door for me. And it was a really, I felt safer actually knowing that there was someone looking, not someone, something looking to say, is your home secure? I think that technology really empowers us to do more, to be more efficient, to do things quicker, and to have more time to do the things we want to do.
And then finally, I mentioned it before, that I think sometimes technology comes, especially in the heartland of technology where we are right now, where a lot of engineers run companies and even the CEOs are engineers, and they don't sometimes fully appreciate the importance of creating a very easy user experience. So let's talk a little bit about, especially with groups of young children, the elderly that may not have the technology background. The one thing that's nice about a key is you turn the key and it opens the door. You compare that to the capabilities of a smart lock where you can do so many different things that makes your life easier. Ease of use is a big deal. So give us your perspective on why ease of use is such a big deal.
Ease of use is so important because, if you want people to adopt the technology, you have to make it easy. And as someone who's been using smart technology for as long as it's been smart or trying to be smart, it is getting easier, but it's not there yet. But I have to say, when I travel, I have a neighbor. She's 83 years old, and she comes and feeds my cats. And the first time I had a smart lock on my door, I thought, oh boy, this is going to not work out well. My cats are going to starve. And she came, and I showed her how to use it, and she was sold. She just thought it was the most brilliant thing ever, and why do I always have to remember where are my keys? People don't even need keys for their car anymore, as long as the key's in your purse. And a lot of people I know who have seen my smart lock, who are older people, are getting these on their second homes in Florida, on their vacation properties, because they are easy. They're easy to use. And I have to tell you, I install mine as well. I did an article on 12 smart locks and installed every one of them. So if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Well, thank you, Andrea. Our next panelist is Shane. Now, Shane, you are, as I mentioned before, you're representing the, I wouldn't say the unwashed masses because that's too philosophical, but you're representing, really a very large audience of users who provide you constant feedback on smart locks. So let's talk about it from when you look at your followers and what you're hearing. What are some of the most common features you're looking for, and how does the ULTRALOQ family address those concerns?
Okay, so I think the things that they're looking for the most, it's anything to make it super easy to use. So, like you were saying earlier, I'm a dad, so I've got kids, and I need for my 10-year-old to be able to operate the smart lock. I also need for, I'm 36, so I'm getting to that age where our parents, they're aging, so they need to be able to use it as well when they come over. One of the features that I really like about the ULTRALOQ is also the one-time use code. So Airbnbs are huge right now. Short-term rentals are huge. Just being able to give that one-time short-term use code that can be used and then it's taken away, I think that's really interesting and awesome. The fingerprint scanner is also just something that anybody can use if you can program the fingerprints in there for that person, and whenever we install the new one, I had the kids to line up, and then we'll just program all the fingerprints, and then from that point on, everybody has their fingerprints, and everybody can very easily use that. I think the one app integration, so the one app for all the different features, I think that's something else that they're looking for. I don't want to have to use an app for just the lock and then just the lights and just the vacuum. I do want everything to be integrated together, and I think that's what my audience is looking for as well, just lots of integration.
So, going down that path, What is the thing that you're hearing most from a concern or challenge standpoint? I mean, all these products are wonderful. They do. I think they can change your lives in many ways, but there's always concerns that people have. The folks in this room, particularly the folks on stage here, we're very familiar with products. We get, our homes look like Best Buy because we're always installing and testing different products, and that's true, by the way. But the question really is for you, Shane, is that from a concern or challenge standpoint, what kind of things come to mind in terms of before I make that decision step to go out and buy a smart lock? What are some of the challenges that you hear?
Okay, so I think the main challenge that people first think of, the traditional key lock, it always works. Like, it's never going to not work unless you break the key. And so battery life, I think, is very important. And I love the fact that this doubles the battery life from the previous version. And we're getting up to a full year. So that's a whole year where you don't really have to worry about when my kid gets home, the latchkey kid, when they get home, is it going to have enough juice to unlock? You just don't have to worry about it. Once you set it up, you're good to go for a full year. And then you're going to get those notifications to let you know that, hey, you're running out of juice. Now, if you're irresponsible like me, then maybe it does run out of juice. But hopefully you'll be more responsible and replace the batteries. And then just the security, I think, is a main concern for most people. Like you had mentioned earlier, by now we're mostly used to being able to use our fingerprints. Everyone knows Apple, so that's a no-brainer. I trust Apple. I'll use the fingerprint there. I think just knowing where your information's going, like your fingerprint, your passcodes, things of that nature, I think it's really important that these are so secure. I think that's the main concern.
So let's pretend for a moment that you're speaking directly to the product development team at u-tec. And I suspect whatever answer you're going to give, that feedback is going to find its way to them. What kind of things would you suggest? What kind of, at a high level, in terms of what to focus on? I think it's remarkable that ULTRALOQ is going down the different color path. That's more of an aesthetics thing, but let's face it. People are putting these in their homes, and it does matter. I mean, Apple figured that out a long time ago. But if you had to give them advice on one or two things and what things you'd like to see them focus on going forward, what would it be?
Okay, so back to the one app for everything. I love the fact that we have the lights and the cameras that are coming. The people that watch my content, they want everything to work together cohesively. So if I open my one app, I should be able to access the lock, the cameras, the lights, the vacuum cleaner, everything together. I think that is one thing that people really want. And just having that cohesion is definitely a main thing that I think that everybody's looking for.
So Daniel, you're last on this panel here. You are representing the American business part of the U.S. economy. Before we get into a couple of questions I have for you, let's talk about your background and how do you use ULTRALOQs in your business.
So my background is electrical engineer, and I started owning property in 1980, residential property, and I graduated into commercial starting in 2013, and I really prefer commercial to residential. No more tenants and the 3 T's, which I won't say what they are, but yeah, triple net commercial is the way to go. And I've been using smart technology for many, many years, back when smart thermostats, and the first smart thermostat that was connected to the internet was Prolipix. This was in Andover, Massachusetts, and it didn't have an Ethernet plug, so you actually had to plug in the wires, all 8 wires, into the right terminals in order to get it to work right. And it's a legacy company. I don't think they're not produced anymore, but it had a great UI. I could see it had remote sensors. So in a residential property I had in New York City, I had 3 tenants, and I was able to have sensors in each person's apartment, so they couldn't tell me, and I had to pay the heat there. So they would, the ploy would be, oh, it's too cold, or it's this, that, and the other thing. So I was able to see for any particular time frame, a day, a week, a month, what the temperature was in the apartments, and if they said it wasn't, I could prove it was. This is what it was. So I don't even know that anybody's smart thermostat. Ecobee maybe does that, but anyway, I got into smart locks with Yale before u-tec was here, and I had some locks that were outside, and they you just couldn't trust them. They were maybe IP67, but if you had the ones with the keypad, and if UV got into it, it would destroy the keypad, and they weren't guaranteeing that rain and snow. So when u-tec came with IP65, one of the first places I put it at a building in New Hampshire, and that's a pretty severe environment where you go down to -30 and up to 95 in the summer with great high humidity, and that lock was on there for, I don't know, 10 years. It never failed environmentally. So it was it proves u-tec can take a beating, take a licking, and keep on ticking. And I've used u-tec in all those outdoor environments, and some of the new companies coming online, like I think it's Silphi or whatever, they make junk because it's not non-ferrous, it's ferrous, so it's going to rust inside. Anyway, what I need in my latest shopping center, I have 48,000 square feet and 32 tenant spaces. Some tenants share, so there's more than one unit, and so 32 1,500 square foot spaces, all with storefront locks. So you've all been to commercial shopping centers where I think there's no automation. So everybody has keys that they have to put in. There's no keyless. And there's a few companies that are doing this, like Alarm Lock, which is very expensive. Starts at $500, goes up to $1,000. This is a NAPCO company. And there's some Chinese startups that they have no track record. And one thing I'm trying to get u-tec interested in is to do commercial and go into B2B versus B2C, which is what they're in right now. So I'm talking to Clark about that in detail. I think it's a great opportunity because u-tec is known for price performance, which is very, very important. And none of the other guys like Yale and Kwikset, maybe not so much. u-tec is certainly, I believe, ahead of them for price performance. What they're not necessarily is their integration. So, for instance, you can see, I remember, I use Android and I use widgets a lot. And I remember on some locks I took out, I would see, I would have widgets for each lock, and it was gold, it was locked, and if it was gray, it was unlocked, and it was interactive. It would happen instantaneously. So I could be 1,000 miles away, and I could look at a panel and see 10 locks and see which ones were locked and which ones weren't. And that was through SmartThings, I believe. Unfortunately, maybe with u-tec's new platform for u-tec locks, not the other guys, with SmartThings, you were able to tie different companies. So you're able to tie Yale and Kwikset, but not u-tec. There were some other ones. So I need to be able to see the status of all my locks, especially picture this shopping center with all these tenants, 25 active tenants, and if I had keyless on all the doors, I want to know the status of it by just looking at one screen and see what's open and what's not. So there's one way to do it now, which is Home Assistant. Home Assistant, or whether any of you have used Home Assistant, it ties 1,000 companies together, all under one roof. But it's very geeky, and it's open interface UI, but it is it's not for the technologically faint of heart. You've got to get into it, and you could spend I don't have enough time to learn all this. Some people could really get into this. You could do all kinds of nuances, and you can see, for instance, you could have a panel where you can see the battery level of each lock. So you know which batteries are going to fail and which ones need to be replaced. You can see the status of each lock. You can see any different parameter on the lock. You talk about Matter. For someone like me that has thousands of dollars invested in legacy technology, from surveillance cameras to different types of sensors to smart locks to thermostats, I'm not going to upgrade all my equipment. It costs thousands of dollars, if I understand correctly. Matter, you have to update. You need to update all your equipment. It's not going to work with legacy stuff. So that's a huge investment for people like me, and it makes me reluctant to do that versus something like Home Assistant. Home Assistant, though, you need a dedicated server at each site. And they make it simple because you use a souped-up Raspberry Pi, which is, for the geeks, this is one of the classic circuit board with a processor. And so it's a souped-up version, and it needs to be online 24/7 so that this technology works. But once you got it in, it really works well. So I guess I need to have. Another thing in my shopping center, I have all these tenants with their own Wi-Fi, and I can't ask the tenant, "Can I use your Wi-Fi for the u-tec lock?" No. And then Zigbee and Z-Wave, they don't go far enough. So the only thing that goes far enough is LoRa. And Yolink, John Zhu, he started this company about 6 years ago. He's fabulously successful with both, he does smart water. So actually you can have a sensor on the floor, and if your sensor gets wet, it's going to shut off the water to the house. And he has smart thermostats. He's got limited smart locks, and all kinds of different sensors. He's using LoRa, and LoRa. And I was using it in my shopping center in Orlando, which had was about 300, 400 feet long, and 2 cement block walls. And the LoRa went through the whole thing, went all the way to the end, with just one hub. So it really works for great distances very effectively. So another thing I'm proposing to u-tec is, in addition to having the Wi-Fi bridges, and they have a bridge, a LoRa bridge, because for applications like mine, it would go much further, and you don't have to bother different people for their credentials. You can just do it on one fell swoop. So it makes things much simpler. Any questions for me?
We're going to actually do that 30 seconds. We're going to have audience questions in a few moments. But last question I want to ask you, Daniel, because you covered a lot of great territory. It's really interesting that the smart lock category, has really been much of a B2C type of phenomenon. But obviously, you're using it now in a B2B configuration. You talked a little bit about, some of the challenges that if you're in a mall, for example, every mall, store owner may have their own Wi-Fi network, and it becomes.
When I bought this property
Yep.
a few months ago, they left 30 sets of keys. Imagine 30 sets of keys on the floor in the upstairs utility room, and the code didn't work for the lock, and I had to break into the utility room in order to get to the keys, and then half of them didn't work anyway. Imagine, this is impossible. There's got to be a better way.
No, that's true, and there's capabilities like Amazon Sidewalk, which is kind of had a bit of a rocky start, but that kind of tries to solve that problem. There are other capabilities with smart. There's now different broadband service providers are implementing a smart cities concept where you have Wi-Fi coverage in entire locality, which makes things a lot easier in terms of controlling different business devices. But that was a great perspective, and I really think that companies like ULTRALOQ have a humongous opportunity, frankly, in the business, in the B2B space. So with that, let's take a few questions from the audience. Who wants to be first? It can't be anybody with u-tec. It has to be a non-u-tec person.
Sure. My question is, why are the latches not electronic and instead electronic and integrated with the deadbolt? So when you unlock one, both unlock together.
Clark, I can take a swing at that, but do you want to take a swing at that? He's asking why the handles are not electronic as well. It's just the core infrastructure of the smart lock. Yeah, and lockable.
So, I mean, the handle is not electric, right? It's still mechanical. Yeah, so we do have another model actually, it's called Combo, which has like an internal, interaction. As soon as you lock your handle, and the deadbolt will be locked automatically. So we do have another model that we have both electronic handle and deadbolt.
Yeah, we've evaluated Mortise too. We think the Mortise lock, you have this. So I want one too. So again, you're talking about the B2B. So this is where we're going. One of those things when you look at it from advertising perspective, from ULTRALOQ, we have to get people to trust us from the brand, right? Retail and the partnerships we're working on is a billboard, right? Because we're up against companies that are 100 years old in the space, right? So when we have that, we're in a good spot. We've had some huge successes over the last year. Breaking into that is a completely, as Daniel could attest, is a completely different beast. So there are some things that, from a simplicity, and that's where we love to get some more information from anybody here, but I've seen from my past, Mortise is being a win, because then you do have that single turn where you're turning the handle and the deadbolt. You just have to make sure you do it right, because there has to be that electronic component in there as well.
Well, it's not. The reason I ask is probably on the order of close to 30 years ago, I had an electronic combination lock.
Okay.
And the door handle and the deadbolt talked to each other. They weren't smart, no Wi-Fi, no app, but I unlocked one, they both unlocked together. So this is not a new idea, and it all came from one vendor. So I do have a U-bolt at home, love it. I would just like you guys to make the second piece and have the two work harmoniously.
I love it. We love these suggestions. I go back a little bit of a challenge on the electric handle, just because then you go back to the battery life tubes, because then you have the individual battery lights versus the tube. So
again, had one 30 years ago for about 26 years until it went belly up. Battery life was never a problem.
Did you guys have one of those a few years back? The thumb part 3 was in the handle and unlocked both?
Yep. We did. That was the UR3.
Anyhow, my question was more of a comment to go back to the R&D team. Thanks for listening.
No, for sure. We appreciate it, for sure.
Any other questions? Yes.
The Apple home key that work with u-tec, and what about that's using the NFC, right? For the So what about the other phone instead of Apple, right?
Bluetooth.
Would that work?
So when you look at the industry, that's how Mark is talking about it. Apple is that device that's running the image. So being in their ecosystem takes 2+ years to work in. I know. So I'm saying, so it takes a long time to get into their ecosystem and have it work in those ecosystem.
Yeah.
So for us to have invested in that and showing our community that we listen to you and we want to embrace Apple, Google, and Alexa, we're covering 95% of the smart devices. So your NFC is your phone, and that's one of the technologies that Apple works with. We're Android NFC as well, but then if you look at the centralized piece of our ecosystem, it's the u-tec app. Everything is controlled by the u-tec app, doesn't matter what one.
That creates a unifying experience.
I like Bluetooth. Like I'm an Android user. I have Apple products that I test, but I'm related to Bluetooth. And so I've used on my
Good question. So,
Sure. Maybe a follow-up question. What just happened to be the grad to see this launch, and actually, we are a company that's inside the building. We happen to be, we are in this ecosystem in terms of the manufacturing the low power chips. That all the smart device, the IoT device, wearable device, watch, all use it. I mean, all of the technology actually used by Google, Amazon. Actually, Amazon and Ring camera is our biggest customers. We're shipping thousands of millions of dollars to them every year. So that's one reason I talked to Khan about. Looks like you guys battery life is very key important. So you guys went from full battery to big battery in order to have a longer battery life to use for over the last 1 year. In fact, we have some customers that it's increased from 30 days to 100 days. So I'm talking to Carl, willing to work with him, and maybe make it a 1 year life to 2 years.
Well, the interesting about the whole battery life topic, because there's a bit of a myth, behind battery life, and there's no question that the smart locks of today's, particularly ultra locks, are much more efficient from a power utilization standpoint. Every round of silicon that comes out is much more efficient than the previous generation. It's not like the old days. If you look at some of the early reviews of non-ultra locks, smart locks, 7, 8 years ago, I mean, they had battery life for 2 or 3 months, and that's clearly not sufficient. And what ULTRALOQ does as a good product developer is they take the amount of battery charge that they have, and then what you do is you do an estimated, well, here's how many times, let's say a person opens and shuts a door, I don't know, call it 8 times a day. And that's how you estimate the life of batteries. But they get well north of over a year, which in the consumer electronics space, that's kind of the golden rule. Like your remote control of your TV, any vendor who sells a remote control for a TV, the batteries have to last at least 1 year. And by the way, there's notifications galore. If you keep ignoring the notifications, no amount of battery life is going to save you. So, but I think they've made a lot of progress in that area.
And so with the adoption of Wi-Fi too, it's a constant learning. So it doesn't matter if it's a channel play, not just an ultralight. So if you look at creating that extra chamber for 4 extra batteries, we're providing what we instead of we're worried by, which is battery life. Longevity, no matter what the technology. So our technology is becoming better, but we have to have the power to support that. We are having conversations with power solutions from even a wireless perspective as well. Where you're pushing wireless power so that we have an onboard battery pack. You don't necessarily. I knew you were to say something different. We'll take that's a beer conversation. Yes.
It's CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. There's 1,000 startup companies there, by the way, and like over 3,000 mature companies. And the economy, like Caterpillar is there with their 3-story high dump truck, and it's on the floor. And up in the third level where the people are up there having drinks. So, and John Deere is there with this machine wings that spread out 100 feet. The other side of the spectrum was 1,000 startup companies all over the world in aisle after aisle with little booths 6 feet by 3 feet, all looking with tremendous ideas to try and raise money. Fantastic. I mean, the innovation in this world is increasing at an exponential rate. It's fantastic. But there was, for instance, there's a French company there that with a watch band, they make electricity from your body heat. Very interesting, very low power. But the more one I wanted to talk about was there's an Israeli company there, and the Israeli company. You remember Nicholas Tesla? So Nicholas Tesla had a fight with Edison, and he was the father of AC current. And then he went off later on in his career, and he had these very large towers that were going to do true wireless charging, except people were afraid of them, and they thought they're going to get irradiated, which possibly they could have. So it never happened. So this Israeli company has actually got this idea working for low power for a radius of 30 feet. And imagine you never have to take your watch off. It charges through the air continuously. And slow power devices like that, I think for smart locks, it has to be a little more power. But it's coming. So this technology is just getting started. And you can be sure if this Israeli company is doing it, probably other people are doing it too. So I see that as the future, true wireless charging.
No, that is true, and there's a whole range of devices in your home that can take advantage of trickle charging. And I know the company you're referring to because I've seen their demonstrations where they can actually trickle charge a mouse, which might be dormant most of the time unless you're using it. But that is coming. That is coming, and for products like this, where you're 95% of the day a smart lock is not being used, and that's the kind of capability that could take advantage of some type of. Thank you for all your time. Thank you for coming, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much.